Morning.
Hey,
How you going?
your lawn looks great.
It's getting there, isn't it?
Yeah, the rain didn't wash it all away.
No, thank God for that.
Well, today's video wasn't exactly the video that I had planned to make. In fact, I was going to do a comparison video between the petrol and the battery mower in the long grass in the back paddock. But when I got back from work and I saw that this lawn was as good as it was looking, I thought now is an ideal time to do its first real mow. We've got a beautiful sunny day today, so we've had a fantastic response from the Plant Doctor Mini Prill fertilizer. The color has increased dramatically, not to mention the fact that it's now really starting to thicken up. So now is the time to break out the real mower. So we've got this at 25 mil. We're going to go down to about 18 with the real mower, and then ideally I'm going to pull it up at about 15 mil. And the only reason I'm going to go even that low with this is because I still want to be able to keep the tiff tuff on the other side of the driveway trimmed up without letting it get much longer. However, if I didn't have to worry about the tiff tuff and I wasn't so lazy about adjusting the height every single time, I would probably leave this at around 18 or 20 mil, because a little bit higher leaf works better with ryegrass, and it'll also stripe up a lot nicer and be much more visual. And of course, the main reason we're doing this rye lawn is for the visual impact and the theatrics. So I've done the refurb, or the little, as I like to call it, Dulux rebuild on the Scott Bonner, or the Rover mower. It's got a new motor, it's got new parts from Moparts Oz. Have I got that right? I said it wrong in the last one. I probably said it wrong again. And also, the other thing I'm going to try today is some power rotary scissors from Old Time Spares. Now, when Jason and Liz were here letting me have a little play with their two real mowers, the Alro and the MEY, they dropped off a set of these, and I didn't actually have a machine to drive them at the time. So, of course, I went out and bought myself a new Honda multi-tool, and I've really not even used it yet. So, apart from a tiny little trial of these buggers, I haven't actually used it. So, I went the multi-tool for a couple of reasons. Number one, with Honda products, as far as I'm aware, it's one of the only products that you need to actually modify the inner drive shaft to make the power scissors fit. So if I went out and bought a new string trimmer, that's all it's ever going to be, is this. So I decided if I bought this sort of system, I can still have a line trimmer, an edger, the scissors, hedge trimmers, whatever I wanted. So for me, I thought this was a good idea. A lot of you are probably asking me why I didn't go down the road of battery, and battery stuff works really well. I've got the battery trimmer from Toro, I've got the battery blower, I love that stuff, but I've got a lot of land here, and sometimes it can take me over 2 hours just to trim. So I've got too much yard here for battery stuff. So I still go petrol, but I like to play with battery when I can. Right, so this is the section here that actually got washed out. So the sprinkler nozzles were really aggressive, and they actually caused the washouts, and I had to oversow it again just to catch up this corner here. And as you can see, the results now are really, really good. You wouldn't in fact know that there was actually an initial issue. So pretty happy with that so far. Okay, well, let's not waste any more time. Let's just put this mower on it. Let's start making some stripes, and then at the end, I'm going to have a play with the power scissors as well. Righto, so 3 passes in, and you've probably now guessed I'm going to try for triple triples. So basically that's 3 mower widths in one direction, 3 the other. So we're going to get some really, really wide stripes. That's my aim. So we'll see how that goes. It might be more realistic going forward just to do the 2, but for today I'm going to try for 3. So probably can't see much happening now, but it's about to change as we start heading up this way. So we'll do 3 runs up this way now, and then obviously you'll start to see our stripes evolve. Now, just touch on the stripe thing. A lot of people believe that the stripes come from changing the height of cut, and that's simply not the case. So what happens is it's the way the actual leaf blade of the grass, so the roller comes along and it rolls it down, and then the sunlight will reflect off this way, and then of course when you come back the other side, it lays back in the reverse direction. Now one side of the ryegrass is more shiny than the other, so that's why it's such a good grass to do this with, and you sort of get the reflection of the light, and that's how you get the light and the dark lines. So we'll do our 3 back up the other way, and you'll start to see what I'm talking about. This is starting to stripe up really nicely. Now as the sun swings around and sets, these lines will get darker because obviously the sunlight needs to reflect in the right angle to get the best out of it. So as I said, by this afternoon this will really be popping. Now as you can see, 3 up, 3 down gives us an opportunity to give a bit of a double cut as well. So we are getting quite a bit of grass off. There's no scalping whatsoever, so we're looking pretty smig. Pop you over the road, give you a wider view, and let this unfold. Well, I tell you what, I'm super impressed at how this has come up after its first cylinder mow. Now, obviously the grass is still young. I think it's somewhere around about the 6 or 7 week mark since we actually even started this project. So you will notice there's a few little bits and pieces that aren't quite perfect at the moment. So the tracks that I've put in the lawn here from this morning's rotary mow are still there. And so they've laid over a little bit, but they will stand up. And once this lawn matures and becomes more established, it'll become much more resilient to that sort of a thing. Now, the other thing I've noticed is, and it's always something that you notice when you're mowing a lawn by hand and you're walking behind the mower, you will notice things that you might not see by just glancing. And I've actually discovered I've got a bit of dry patch down near the road. So I haven't actually irrigated this for about a week or maybe a little bit more now. So I will put some irrigation on that this afternoon. And the other thing you've got to be careful of, along the back here, along the hedge, where it's really tight to turn around, we need to limit how we pivot the rollers on the ground because they can bruise especially young new turf, particularly the cool season types like this ryegrass, bent grass, fescue, etc. So we have to be very gentle with our turns while it's establishing, and also while it's more mature as well, because we are scuffing around fairly tightly there even with a split roller. So there are a few things that will continue to improve as we go along, and they will become less noticeable. But for the first effort, for the first mow, super happy with that. Came up really well. I'm already contemplating my next mow a bit lower, so maybe bring it down closer to the 15 mil because it seemed to handle that one quite nicely indeed. But I'll just feel my way through that and see how it goes. Now, I want to have a little play with these power scissors now. I've never actually used any before. Apart from back in my greenkeeping days, we had a very similar design that we used to edge bunkers, the grass out of the sand bunkers, and I really only remember using it once or twice because they're a fairly new thing back then. But I'm just interested to see how they are to trim around these mower edges. I've got these quick curve edges. First impressions of these power rotary scissors here are they're probably a little bit more noisy than I was expecting them to be, and it took me a little bit of a few minutes, I should say. It took me just a little bit of time to get used to how they operate, being so accustomed to a string trimmer, changing across to these. It took me just a few meters probably to get the hang of it, and just sort of positioning the device correctly, sort of flat on the ground. I felt at the beginning I probably had it pushed against the rye too much, and that there was sort of grabbing a little bit. Rye can be a little bit grippy or a little bit sticky in that regard, but once I got the hang of it and I felt they traveled one direction easier than the other, and I think that would also depend on which way your string trimmer turns. So for me, I felt it is easier to go left, and maybe some of you might find it easier to go right, but that was just a little thing that I noticed. I'm going to enjoy getting to know these a bit more and using them more often and getting more precise with them and more accustomed to how they operate. So I think they're a good thing. Anyway guys, look, from here on in with the rye, lots of mowing. I'm going to give it a drink later on for that dry patch, and we'll get it down that little bit lower. So anyway guys, have a fantastic weekend. I hope you've enjoyed the episode, and I'll catch you here next time on the Aussie Lawn.